Has this been Boris Johnson's war? Kick us off, Christopher.
Well, in the sense that we're not actually fighting, aren't we? What he's done is very cleverly, and with Ben Wallace there, leading the way in terms of getting the kind of the West organised into an opposition of sanctions against Boris Johnson. Ben Wallace particularly is well liked by Estonia, the Baltic states. That's next in Putin's eye line, and that's when we get into the issue of triggering conflict with NATO. Hasn't happened yet. I think it's been. I think Britain's done really well at this. I think that we sit really, really snugly in the international system. We've got the US on one side, the European Union looking at its own army, and that makes Britain, a massive contributor to NATO, really influential. And I was wondering if you might ask Ben Wallace just then whether he might want to be NATO Secretary General, because the job's up in September, and I've heard the Yanks wanted to do it, and he's much tipped for that job. If so, he'd be great, because I think you've seen him lead the way there, going to Moscow when they could go to Moscow and put it to the Russians. I mean, I think he's really done really well. I think it's. I was fascinated hearing your two colleagues there, Christopher and Peter, talk about spin and the rest of it. In the old days, we used to have to write about thinly veiled attacks, which meant they're barely attacks at all in the Labour years, and it becomes more transparent, I think, since the Brexit years. But on this one, clearly, there is unity behind the government, and that's why it's very hard for Labour to go anywhere apart from support the government.
Yeah, indeed so. And I'm sorry I missed the NATO question, but I will bear it in mind next time, hopefully before that appointment is made. I'll bring Peter in last because he's the been there, done it cabinet minister. But Christopher's point there, thinly veiled attack, exactly the point that you were making earlier on. But let me put it to you quite bluntly. Has it been Boris Johnson's war? Has he risen out of the ashes of all of that ghastliness that he was facing a couple of months ago?
Well, Boris has obviously had a very good war indeed. I think the question in British politics is, given that we're not going to have a general election until 2024, is will this have a lasting effect and impact on the British voters' choices? Now, I remember George H.W. Bush, George Bush Sr., who had 90% approval ratings after the first Iraq war. And yet, when the presidential election came, when was it, 1992, he lost to Bill Clinton. Now, American politics is not the same thing as British politics, but the question I do ask myself is, even if Boris has had a good war and will continue to have a good war, when things like the cost of living crisis, so-called energy prices, tax rises, national insurance payments, start to hit the British voter, will that obscure everything that Boris has achieved in this war and may yet achieve? And I don't know what the answer is, except I would say, in a snap response, is that normally domestic considerations trump those of foreign and security policy.